Okay guys, I wanted to talk to you about this car for a minute. You can see that the car is running, right? It's working just fine. I want to make this video because I made a huge diagnostic test on this car, and I think this is going to be very useful for people who are having issues with either cranking, have a gas problem, or it just simply won't start at all. I'm going to be very detailed on this. The number one problem in this car is usually fuel pump, but this car can be very misleading sometimes. And the number one place where you would like to check, and this car had two main problems. It was the ignition switch and the fuel pump. And I'm going to get to you on what you need to know. Okay. Number one, the computer was not receiving power. So, as you can see in my troubleshooting videos, my scanner was not working in the first part of the videos. The reason why is because one of the wires in the ignition switch was loose. And what happens is if these wires are loose, it's not going to get good connection. And I'm going to show you what happened here in this fuse box. You can see I junked this fuse, and there's a very specific reason why it's junked with the cable. Number one is because with the fuse, it did not want to work. The scanner still did not want to scan. And what that fuse does is it goes to the PCM diode and the PCM relay. And I'm going to show you in the fuse box where it goes to. That fuse goes to this diode right here, and then this diode goes to one of the pins on this PCM relay. Okay, that's why it wasn't getting power. This was a very long troubleshooting process, but the important thing was that it got fixed and I learned a lot from it. Alright, so this relay you can see the cables here is a brown. This brown I think is brown cable or something like that. It's kind of, I don't know, it's brown cable, but I don't know what the other color is. I don't know if you can see that. This brown one right here, that one goes to this relay. But you have to be careful because I got confused. I changed something I wasn't supposed to change first, which was the range sensor. Because this one, when it's in park, it's gonna let you turn it on when it's in park. And the brown cable comes from here, and then it goes to but the problem was not the range sensor. The problem was the ignition switch. The ignition switch cables was loose, and the ignition switch was also bad. How do I know my ignition switch was bad? Well, in the first part of the videos, you would see that there was a ignition switch circuit problem, and therefore I changed it. And It's not very clear whether or not the ignition switch was bad, but I changed it either way. But what's important about the ignition switch is that the ignition switch gives power to the fuses, and there was like 2 or 3 fuses that did not have power. The fuse was okay, but there was no power to the fuse, so that was an issue. But you can see that I still have the wire there. I'm gonna try again with the fuse again to see if it works. Maybe it was because the ignition switch cable was loose. But I'm gonna try again with the fuse. I'm not sure if it's gonna work or not, but I know for sure the scanner is working. Okay, so if you want to rule out whether or not is the fuel pump is bad or not, or if you're receiving power to the fuel pump, the number one spot that I think would be easiest to check is right here under the seat. This red black cable, the red is positive, the black one is negative. Okay, so what happens here? It goes to here, the black yellow goes to the positive, the black one goes to the white red cable. Okay, if you have a digital multimeter and you want to know you're getting power, you will want to disconnect this connector and put your positive in the black yellow on the you see pin 1, then pin 2. So you will open this up and then you will check on pin 2, put your positive in pin 2, and then on your negative lead on the third pin, check if you have 12 volts. That would rule out the possibility whether or not you are receiving power to the fuel pump. If that is okay, if you have 12 volts, then you're receiving power. Now you just have to check if your fuel pump is good or not. But more than likely, if you have 12 volts, then the fuel pump is bad, because you don't hear it turn on, you don't hear the motor running, and you're supposed to hear it. So having said that, if you want to test if your fuel pump works, you can simply put positive 12 volts to the red wire and ground to the black one, just to see if you can hear the motor spinning. And if you want to, you can take out the fuel pump to make sure you can hear the motor spinning or not. You could just connect it to you can take out the fuel pump and then test it with the battery, see if the motor works or not, and that would rule out whether or not your fuel pump is bad. If the motor doesn't spin, then your fuel pump is bad. More than likely, you're gonna have to change out the whole entire fuel pump, because the motor itself, it has a return line. It has a fuel pump return, and the ones that they sell, any auto parts, doesn't come with the return line, but the ones that come with the whole entire fuel pump, it has it already. So more than likely, you're just gonna have to change out the whole entire fuel pump. But that wraps up the whole entire issue of this car. So number one, make sure your ignition switch cables are all the way in. Push it in all the way in to make sure you have good contact, because that was my number one issue. It was the ignition switch was the number one issue, and it caused a lot of confusing, and it was very misleading, and that's the number one place I would start. And it could also, you probably would have to change out the ignition switch, but I would start out with the cables first, because I thought a lot of people thought, I think this is a common issue as well. A lot of people would think that the battery's bad, the battery's bad. And what happens is they charge the battery or they change the battery and they say, oh, now it starts. But usually what the problem is that there is a one of the cables in the ignition switch is loose, and that's why the problem was not that the battery was discharged or bad battery. The problem was that the battery, one of the cables in the ignition switch was bad. Not bad, but it was loose. But that's where I would start. And yeah. So you have to be careful with that. If you have any questions, just leave a comment. Another thing I forgot to mention, which is really important. In part 6 of my video, I explained in the diagram that there's in the diagram it shows that pin 7 on the OBD2 port, which is let's see, I don't remember which one is pin 7, but you can check in the diagram, but it has to have 12 volts and it has to have continuity to the PCM. It shows in the diagram if that doesn't have power in the pin 7, then more than likely your PCM is not getting power, and that would be one of the symptoms. Again, just check your ignition switch cables and your ignition, probably with the scanner, you see if you're having any issue with the ignition switch. And this wraps up everything, and I hope you guys have a good day. All right.